So is this where he's sort of combating the replacement theology?
Yeah,
Where
I
people
think
now,
he gets more into that, but
Yeah.
he's setting that up also, right?
where people nowadays think that the church took the place of Israel, correct? That's what the whole,
Replacement theology,
which we don't believe in, but this is what he's leading into, sort of combating that that's not the case. God still has a plan for his people.
At its core, that belief is anti-Christ.
Yes.
The hatred for
Anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitic is anti-Christ, and it's
Yes.
rooted in its nature.
Yeah.
Hating the nation of Israel.
I mean, that's nothing new. You know, you get it from since the time of the Egyptians. Who was it? Jezebel. You know, they always trying to wipe out the Jews. It was always, but it again, it goes back to the prophecy in the garden. You know, the seed of the serpent being crushed, the head of the seed of the serpent being crushed by the seed of the woman. You know, but that's the spiritual aspect of it. But you always seen throughout the scriptures where the Jewish nation, you know, Satan would try to wipe out the Jewish nation. But that was, you know, that anti-Semitism, that hatred, even with Hitler, just this hatred for the Jewish nation. But like you said, it's really anti-Christ, because according to the flesh, Christ was a Jew.
Satan is always trying to wipe out the Jewish nation, even to 2022.
Yes.
Even till today. All you gotta do is pay attention.
And you see remnants in all these religions, and also why it is part of the difficulty that you see why current Jews have a hard time dealing with Christianity and with Jesus, because like the Catholic Church, they're part of the whole replacement theology, and they say that they have replaced the Jews, right? And in all their teachings, because they speak against the Jews, and like out of the Reformation, and the way you get, you know, finally salvation by, you know, faith through grace and all that. Martin Luther still held, Augustine came out of it, and Luther and all the rest of the guys came out of it, right? But when Augustine first came out of the Catholic Church, he understood salvation, that it's not of works like the way Catholic Church believe, but he still kept the belief of that the church has replaced Israel, and he had such strong hatred towards the Jews, and that said that the Jews should be terminated, should be destroyed, because they hate God, they crucified Christ. So he had such strong anti-Semitism from the Catholic Church, and he held on to that belief that it's in the walls of the Holocaust or whatever. So when Jews see that, they say, oh, this is the Christian tenet, this is Christian belief, that we should be killed, we should be burned, we should, you know. So it's like they have a difficulty, because that was some of the early church history, from Augustine moving to Luther, moving to John Calvin, their strong hatred for Israel.
Mm-hmm. So in from 6 to 13, right? All right. So how does this thing work together, right? The fact that, you know, Israel rejected God. Does his promises end, right? Is it not going to happen? And Paul kind of goes into, like, you're looking at it all wrong, right? Not all Israel is Israel. Not everybody that came from Abraham is Israel. Just because you're seeing most of the people, right? In general, they rejected God because they got it first. Like, they had that privilege of getting everything first. And they rejected God. That doesn't mean, you know, his promises are none effect, because God and his sovereignty, he elected a group of people, and is based on the promises, is based on who he picked, right? So what you're seeing that's not going to determine what God predetermined.
All right, so pretty much Israel's response is not going to change or make null or void God's sovereign plan.
It cannot. It will not. In the last chapter 8, we kind of went through the chains, right?
Yeah.
The chains of God's plan of salvation, right? Who's going to come against this? What force, what principality, right? And broke down how you got Christ, you got the Holy Spirit, you got the chain links of salvation. And Paul was like, yo, God predetermined this, so it's going to happen. So now he's kind of going, he's to me, I'm reading it, he's like, yo, God has always done this, even with Israel. Even though it may seem like they rejected God, he was like, no, it's through what he predetermined. And then he goes into it. All right, it's not all of Israel. So you're looking at all of Israel. He's like, no, not all of Israel is Israel. And back in chapter 4, he was like, now don't remove the faith aspect, right? Those that have the same faith of Abraham is the true children of Israel. Not discounting the flesh. Right? We're not doing that because that's just as important. But it's both. It goes together, right? And then he's now going into these things where God chooses who he wants to choose, and it's just based on his sovereignty. It's not based on anything else.
Right.
Right. So we went through that part, kind of went through the election process. Abraham didn't have no kids, so he had Ishmael. Ishmael turned into a whole nation. They're part of Abraham, but he was like, nah. Ishmael wasn't elected.
Right. Neither were the sons from Keturah.
Right.
Yeah.
So he had multiple sons.
Yeah, multiple
but I picked Isaac. And then he goes into Isaac, Rebecca. Rebecca had twins.
Right.
And he said, no, the older shall serve the younger. I picked Jacob. They didn't even do anything. I'm not picking it based on what they do. Right. I'm picking it based on my sovereignty. Right. So that's pretty much where we ended. And we explained the whole Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. It's not a dislike for one individual. There's a prophetic aspect to it, and he's talking about his plan. I don't want you for this process.
Right.
Yeah, and I think I just want to also add, not only it's just a dislike where I'm just choosing Jacob over Esau. Also, I think it's also that he doesn't. God don't hate sinners. He hates their sin, because heaven is filled with sinners aside from Christ. He loves the sinners, so he loves Esau. Hates his sin, but he loves Esau.
Right.
But in this purpose, this is specifically for election of developing his nation, so that the Messiah could come through.